By the end of this video, you're going to understand something most people never realize about infidelity. Cheating isn't usually about wanting someone better. It's not even about replacing the person you're with. And here's the unsettling part. Many people who cheat still genuinely love their partner. So if the love is real, then why risk everything? Why gamble a relationship, a family, your own integrity, over something that isn't even about wanting another person? We hear about infidelity and instantly assume the same story. The love must have died. They weren't satisfied. They found someone better. But what if none of that is true? What if cheating has almost nothing to do with the person someone cheats with, and everything to do with something happening inside themselves? Because here's the paradox. The affair is rarely about attraction, compatibility, or a more exciting partner. In fact, it's often not about the relationship at all. So why do people cheat, even when they still love deeply? What's actually driving it, beneath everything they don't talk about? Let's start with something that makes people deeply uncomfortable. You can love someone and still betray them. And these two seemingly contradictory truths can coexist in the same heart at the same time. Love doesn't immunize anyone against making devastating choices, no matter how deeply they care or how committed they believe themselves to be. And this is what makes infidelity so confusing and painful, so impossible to neatly categorize or understand. If someone cheats, we want it to mean they never really loved us, because that would make sense. That would fit our narrative about how love works. That would allow us to file it away under "they didn't care enough" and move on with some semblance of clarity. But here's the truth. Most people who have affairs describe still having genuine feelings for their partner. Not the hollow remnants of love, but actual, real connection and care. They're not sitting there thinking, "I don't love them anymore," as if the affair is simply the logical conclusion to love dying. They're thinking, "I love them, and I don't understand why I'm doing this. And that contradiction is tearing me apart." And this is where it gets complex, where the simple explanations fall apart, and we're left with something much more nuanced and uncomfortable. Infidelity isn't usually about the relationship being bad, about fundamental incompatibility or a lack of love. It's about something missing inside the person who cheats, something they're trying to escape, avoid, or fill through the temporary distraction of another person. Dr. Esther Perel, a psychotherapist who's spent decades studying infidelity and written extensively about the complex motivations behind it, found that most affairs aren't about finding a better partner, someone more attractive or more compatible. They're about finding a different version of yourself, or desperately trying to escape the version you've become. The one who feels trapped, invisible, or lost in the routine of everyday life. But what about that missing piece? What are people actually looking for when they have an affair? Often, it's not another person. It's another version of themselves. The person they used to be. The person they wish they were. The person they fear they're no longer. Think about what happens in long-term relationships. You settle into routines. You become mom or dad. You become the responsible one, the provider, the caretaker. You handle bills and kids and obligations. And somewhere in all of that, you lose touch with the part of yourself that felt exciting, desired, alive, free. And here's what's really happening. The affair isn't about the other person being special. It's about them reflecting back a version of you that you've been missing. With them, you're not the exhausted parent or the stressed worker. You're exciting again, desired again. You feel like you matter in a way that's just about you, not about your role or responsibilities. This is what psychologists call identity crisis infidelity. You're not rejecting your partner. You're desperately trying to reconnect with parts of yourself you feel you've lost. Now let's talk about something deeper. Sometimes cheating is about running away from yourself entirely, not towards someone better, away from something you can't face. Pain, inadequacy, aging, mortality, feeling trapped, feeling invisible, feeling like your life isn't what you thought it would be. The affair becomes an escape hatch, a way to not think about the things that terrify you, a distraction from the existential questions you don't have answers to, a temporary reprieve from feeling stuck, ordinary, insignificant. And here's where it gets really interesting. The person you're cheating with isn't actually that important. They're a vehicle, a means of avoiding what you're actually struggling with. If it weren't them, it would likely be someone else, because the affair isn't really about them. It's about what they represent: escape, excitement, validation, aliveness. Dr. Shirley Glass, who researched infidelity for decades, found that many people who have affairs describe feeling like they were sleepwalking through life before it happened. The affair felt like waking up, not because the other person was extraordinary, but because the affair itself, the secrecy, the risk, the newness, made them feel something again. But here's the truth. You can't run from yourself. The affair doesn't solve the underlying issue. It just creates a bigger crisis that temporarily distracts you from the original one. But what about feeling unseen? Because this is one of the most common threads in infidelity. Feeling invisible in your own relationship. Not necessarily because your partner doesn't care, but because life gets busy. Kids need attention. Work demands focus. Bills need paying. And somewhere in all that, you stop really seeing each other. You stop being curious about each other. You become logistics partners, not lovers. And here's what's fascinating. When someone else shows interest, real, focused, curious interest, it feels intoxicating. Not because they're better than your partner, but because they're paying attention in a way you haven't felt in years. They ask questions. They listen. They're curious about you, not you as a parent or provider, but you as a person. And that attention fills something that's been empty. This is what psychologist John Gottman calls turning away in relationships. Over time, couples stop responding to each other's bids for connection, those small moments of reaching out. And when someone feels chronically unseen by their partner, they become vulnerable to anyone who does see them. But here's the thing. The affair doesn't fix the attention wound. It just temporarily masks it. Because the real issue isn't about who's giving attention. It's about why you stopped giving it to each other in the first place. Now let's talk about chemistry, because here's something people misunderstand. That intense feeling in an affair, it's not proof of a deeper connection. It's neurology. New relationships flood your brain with dopamine, norepinephrine, oxytocin. You feel alive, obsessed, consumed. Every text is thrilling. Every moment together is electric. It feels like fate, like soulmates, like this must be real because it's so intense. But here's the psychology behind this. That intensity isn't about the person. It's about novelty. It's about secrecy. It's about the chemical cocktail your brain produces in new romantic situations. And that cocktail fades with everyone, in every relationship, eventually. Dr. Helen Fisher's neuroscience research shows that romantic love activates the same reward centers as cocaine. It's literally addictive. But like any addiction, tolerance builds. The high becomes normal, and you need more to feel the same way. So you're not comparing your partner to this new person fairly. You're comparing years of comfortable, familiar love to the neurological high of novelty and secrecy. You're comparing your Tuesday morning to their Saturday night. And this is where it gets really important. If you left your partner for the affair partner within a few years, that intensity would fade too. Because the intensity was never about them being your true love. It was about the situation being new. But what about the person doing the cheating? Because here's what people don't talk about enough. Most people who cheat hate themselves for it. They're not cruel or heartless. They're often deeply conflicted. They love their partner. They don't want to hurt them, but they also can't seem to stop. And here's what's really happening. They're caught between two versions of themselves. The person they want to be, loyal, honest, committed, and the person they're being, someone they don't recognize, someone they're ashamed of. This cognitive dissonance creates immense psychological pain. You're betraying not just your partner, but your own values. And that internal conflict is agonizing. Dr. Brené Brown's research on shame shows that when we act in ways that contradict our values, we experience deep shame. And shame makes us hide, isolate, continue the behavior we're ashamed of, creating a vicious cycle. So the person cheating is often suffering too. Not in the same way as the betrayed partner, not even close, but they're trapped in a pattern they hate, driven by needs they don't fully understand, struggling with a version of themselves they're horrified by. This doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses betrayal. But understanding it might help explain why people make these devastating choices even when they still love their partner. So what does this mean? For anyone who's been cheated on, for anyone who's cheated, for anyone trying to understand, first, it means infidelity is rarely about you not being enough. It's about something broken or missing in the person who cheated, something they were trying to fix, avoid, or escape. Second, it means love and betrayal can coexist. Someone can genuinely love you and still make a catastrophic choice. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't erase the pain, but it might shift how you understand what happened. Third, it means healing, whether individually or as a couple, requires addressing the underlying issue. Not just the affair itself, but what drove it. The identity crisis, the attention wound, the escape mechanism, the missing piece. And maybe most importantly, it means infidelity doesn't have to be the end. Some relationships don't survive it, and that's valid. But some do, and emerge stronger, more honest, more connected than before. Not because the betrayal was okay, but because the pain forced both people to finally address what wasn't working. Remember that paradox we started with? How people can cheat even when they still love their partner. Here's what I need you to understand. Infidelity is almost never about the love being gone. It's about someone being lost. Lost in themselves, lost in the relationship, lost in life, and making a devastating choice in an attempt to find their way back. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't excuse the betrayal. But it might help you understand that if someone cheated on you, it probably wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because they weren't enough for themselves. And they made a terrible choice, trying to fill that void. And if you're the one who cheated, know this. You're not irredeemable. You're not a monster. You're a human who made a devastating mistake. And the path forward requires radical honesty. With your partner, but first with yourself, about what you were really running from. Love and betrayal. They can coexist, but understanding why might be the first step toward healing. Whatever that healing looks like for you.